Alrighty, so for today's class, I've got a book here which is called the Book of Awakening, and there's messages and readings and things in here every day. And the one for today sort of talks about patience, which I thought was sort of appropriate given everything going on and so much uncertainty. And it's quite a long post, or message, so I won't read the whole thing, but I did want to touch on a few points. So it's talking about how patience is hard for many of us, especially in today's world, and how that often leads to fear. And fear wants us to act too soon. Patience, as hard as it is, helps us outlast our preconceptions. And so with that in mind, let's start by sitting in a comfortable seated position. So that might be cross-legged, or it might be up on your knees. And I'd like you to close your eyes and maybe see if you can think of a situation that's now resolved, but something that required you to be more patient than you were prepared to be. And that might even just be, when can we go out now, and when will things be normal? And if you can, recall how you viewed that situation, the people that were involved, how things first presented themselves, maybe if your patience ran out. And think about how the waiting changed you. And maybe it's something that you've learned from. It's something that you can use more in your daily life. And like I said, if it's, maybe any of the current situations in the world, how we can all potentially learn to appreciate some of the smaller, slower things in our daily lives. And while your eyes are closed, let's just think about that for another moment. Maybe think about how you can use that patience and that learning in your practice today and in other ways that you move around throughout your days. Now let's bring some awareness to our breathing and see if you can count to 3 on your inhale, hold for a moment, and then 3 for your exhale. That moment that we pause at the top is a small amount of patience while we're holding that breath before we exhale. So often we don't pay attention to our breath during the day, but without it, we wouldn't be here. We'll slowly start to open our eyes. Gentle gaze. And I'd like you to take a big inhale, and then we're going to open our mouth and exhale. Since we're all still in our homes and safe away from each other, we can take this big inhale. Open that mouth, exhale. Big sigh out. One more time, inhale. Starting to move around some of that stagnant air in our body. And so from here, we're going to start it off a little bit differently today. So if you're up on your knees, you can come down onto your sit bones, or you can uncross your legs. And we're going to come first into a boat pose today. Just gentle, no need to take it maybe as far as you would at the end of a practice. So with your knees bent, you're sitting nice and tall. And as we start to tip ourselves back, shifting the weight a little further, try and keep that spine straight, the tailbone's tucked, and imagine that you've got a string on the front of your chest, pulling you forward, maybe using your hands to find that balance. If you can, you might be able to reach your arms out. You might be able to straighten those legs a little bit further, just focusing on keeping this chest forward. Breathing while we're here. The core is engaged. One more breath. Then we'll rise up to a seated position, crossing the legs. And from here, we're going to come into a twist. So let's inhale our arms up and overhead. Exhale, bring that left hand to the right knee. Right hand comes behind us. We're still sitting nice and tall. Exhale, let's see if we can look out to the right side or back over your right shoulder without straining that neck too much. A gentle twist in our spine. And then let's inhale our arms up and overhead. Exhale, let's bring them back down to our knees. So right hand on right knee, left hand on left knee. And then we're going to start to hollow out, curving your spine. Maybe dropping your chin. So it's almost like cat and cow, but we're seated right now. We're going to inhale and lift that chest, hands on the knees to help you pull yourself forward, maybe lifting your chin to the ceiling. And then exhale and release and curve that spine again. Inhaling, coming back to center, lifting that chest, pushing it forward, maybe lifting the head. And then exhale, release, coming to a neutral spine. We'll release those hands. We're going to roll back into a boat pose one more time. So let's uncross those legs. Spine is straight. Start to rock back. See if you can maybe reach a little bit further forward, maybe lifting your legs a little further forward than you did last time. Breathing while you're here. Two more breaths. And again, we're going to rise up into a seated position. Let's cross our legs the opposite way this time, if you remember which one you had under and over last time. I always go one way. This one feels a little bit awkward. Let's inhale those arms up and overhead, sitting nice and tall again. Then exhale, we're going to rotate the spine so the right hand comes to the left knee. Left hand behind us, sitting nice and tall. Inhale, maybe find a little bit more length, and exhale as we twist, looking out to the side or over that back shoulder. And making sure that you're not straining your neck. Just a gentle twist. Inhaling again, arms up and overhead. And hands back out to the side. Exhale. And now we're going to come up into a tabletop pose. So coming onto our hands and our knees. Forgot to set my timer. Hold on a minute. Okay, so knees are below hips, hands and wrists below shoulders as much as we can without a mirror. Tops of the feet are pushing into the mat. And let's find a neutral spine. So your core is slightly engaged, resting here. We're going to just do some regular cat and cows, moving with our breath. So on the inhale, let's drop the belly, lift the tailbone, lift the chest. Exhale, pushing into the mat as we curl the spine, tucking the chin, tuck the tailbone. Inhale, lifting the chest and the chin, the tailbone. Exhale, moving with your own breath. Feel free to wiggle the hips if you need to. Any other movements that your spine might need waking things up. And we'll come to a neutral position. We're going to push back into downward facing dog. So fingers are spread wide. Index fingers pointing forward. Let's tuck those toes, lift the tailbone. Push back into downward facing dog. Walking our legs out. Hips are giving a bit of a wiggle. Maybe you'll bend those knees, straighten them. Then from here, we're going to shift our weight forward into a plank pose. So in plank, our core is engaged. And we're going to do some knee and elbow taps while we're here. So we're going to lift that right foot off the mat, tap the right knee to the right elbow, and back out without putting it on the mat. Then we'll bring the right knee to the left elbow, back out to the mat, right knee curving it in, curling your head in, back out, placing those right toes onto the mat. Core is still engaged. Let's lift those left feet off the mat. Bring that left knee to the left elbow, straight back out. Left knee to right elbow, straight back out. Left knee curling in, straight back out, placing it down onto the mat. And then we'll push back into a downward facing dog. From here, we're going to lower our knees down to the mat for child's pose. Let's keep those knees together this time. Push the sit bones back to our heels. See if you can bring your forehead down to the mat, or maybe create a stack with your hands, a place for it to rest your neck. Coming back to your breath here. Starting to rise up, let's place those hands back out in front of us on the mat. The fingertips are spread wide. Start to lift our tailbone, tuck our toes, and push back again to downward facing dog. From here, we're going to look forward between your hands. Step your right foot forward, your left to meet your right, forward fold. Then your inhale, very slowly, we're going to rise up. Let's bring our hands to our heart center. We're going to separate the feet about hip width apart. And then we're going to fold forward here. Let's release our hands from prayer pose. And once we get into the forward fold, or as we go into it, I'd like you to see if you can interlace your fingers. If that's not possible for you, maybe you can grab onto one of your wrists. The idea is just to open our shoulders out a little bit further as we fold. So whichever way you've got here, wrists or hands, gently pulling those shoulders back as we fold forward. Maybe bend the knees here a little bit. And then once we're back, we'll start to lift those, once we're forward, we'll start to lift those hands up towards the sky if we can, holding onto your wrist or with your fingers interlaced. Breathing here. Very slowly, we're going to start to rise up, pulling those hands back, lowering them down to our lower spine as we come up. Let's release those wrists and those fingers, giving them a bit of a shake. Give those legs a bit of a shake as well. And then from here, we're going to take our first vinyasa flow. So we're going to inhale those arms up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, place those hands down on the mat and let's step back to a high plank. From here, you can take chaturanga or you can lower your knees, tucking those elbows in, lowering your chest, slowly your chin, coming into a baby cobra. pushing that mat away from you. Lowering back down and pushing up to downward facing dog. From here, we'll look forward between your hands and we'll step that left foot forward, the right to meet the left, forward fold, and inhale, rising up very slowly, bringing our hands to our heart center. And then again, we're going to inhale those arms up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, moving with your own breath. Step back to high plank, or with me if you'd like. Lowering for chaturanga, or knees chest chin, upward dog, and pushing back into downward facing dog. 3 breaths here. Then we'll look forward between your hands. Step that right foot forward, the left to meet the right, forward fold. Inhale, rising up slowly again, bringing our hands to our heart center. Last time, inhale your arms up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Stepping back to a high plank, either taking a vinyasa or we'll meet in downward facing dog. Fingers are spread wide, pushing into the mat. Tailbone is lifting towards the ceiling. Looking forward between your hands, let's step that left foot forward. The right to meet the left, forward fold. Inhale, rising up, very slowly. Hands coming back to our heart center. From here, we're going to inhale again, arms up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. This time we're going to step back to a high lunge. So let's step that right foot back. Bring our hands to our hips. Check that they're square to the front of the mat. Shoulders are back. Inhale those arms up and overhead. Shoulders are away from the ears. You can see that left big toe in front of you if you were to look down. Your knees not falling inwards. Gaze is gently out in front of you. Let's exhale, bring those hands back to the hips. We're going to push off from that right foot, stepping forward for Tadasana, mountain pose. Give those legs a little bit of a wiggle. Then we'll inhale the arms up and overhead again. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, stepping the left leg back this time for high lunge. When you're ready, hands to the hips, rise up, catching our balance. When you're ready, raise those arms up overhead. If you fall out of this, be patient with yourself, forgiving, step back in where you need to, moving at your own pace. Maybe we're smiling. On the exhale this time, let's place our hands either side of that right foot, step back into a high plank. We'll either take a vinyasa or meet in downward facing dog. Focusing on your breath. On the inhale, we're going to lift that right leg up towards the sky nice and long, keeping it straight up first. And then let's bend that knee, looking out under our right shoulder. Holding here for a moment. We're gonna bring it forward, stepping between our hands. Let's rotate that back foot 90 degrees. We're coming up to warrior two, checking the alignment on your feet. That right heel is in line with the instep of your left foot. And we'll windmill those arms open. Breathing here. Sometimes the transitions that get us into these poses, these three-legged dogs, vinyasas, are just important as the final pose that we're coming to. Try not to rush them, checking our alignment. We're gonna go ahead and straighten that front right leg, coming into triangle pose. So let's shimmy that left hip out towards the back of the space that you're in. Right hand sweeps down forward to the front of your right thigh. Left hand can come up towards the ceiling. Maybe you've got your hand down on the mat, fingertips. Maybe it's floating in the air, somewhere on the inside of your right calf. Imagining you're pressed between two planes of glass. We're trying to open the chest, that left shoulder. Maybe you'll use the right calf as leverage to help open yourself a little bit further. One more breath here. Let's rise back up to warrior two. Also one breath here. Then we'll windmill those arms either side of that right foot. Let's step back to a high plank and chaturanga or straight to downward facing dog. Maybe shake your head no while we're here in downward facing dog. Gentle movement for that neck. Maybe yes. So we're looking back at our toes here. We're gonna inhale that left leg nice and long, keeping it straight at first. Hips are squared first to start. Nice long stretch. Then we'll bend the knee and open it to the side, looking out under that left arm. Don't forget to breathe while we're here. Let's bring that left leg forward, placing it between our hands. Rise up into warrior two on the left side. Checking our alignment. We're going to be here for a few breaths. Spine is nice and straight, not too far forwards or back. Gentle gaze over those left fingers. Patience, not wanting to rush to the next pose, even if this is a little bit difficult, even if our muscles are asking us to move. Let's go ahead and straighten that left leg. Shimmy the right hip out towards the back of your mat. Left hand is coming forward and down to the inside of your left calf. Right arm open towards the ceiling. Gaze is either out to the side or up towards the ceiling if that's not a strain for your neck. Two more breaths here. Let's rise back up to warrior two. Taking a breath here, we'll windmill the hands either side of that front left foot, stepping back to high plank. You're going to take a vinyasa or we'll meet in downward facing dog. Again, we're going to lower into child's pose. Let's keep those knees together this time still. Knees together, untuck those toes, pushing ourselves back to our sit bones. Finding a place to rest that forehead. From here, we're going to rise up into a tabletop position. So we'll start to lift ourselves back up. And here, tabletop, we're going to have our wrists below our shoulders, knees below hips. Just sweep that right arm up and open towards the right side, and then swing it down and under that left arm, threading the needle, seeing if you can come on top of that right shoulder, maybe walk the hands, the left fingertips further forward as you wiggle yourself through. If possible, you might like to take that left hand and sweep it behind you, grabbing hold of that right hip or resting it on your lower back. Sort of an awkward stretch and pose for us, but it's quite good for helping to create some space in those shoulder blades. Breathing while we're here. Let's swing that left arm up and over, coming back onto the fingertips if you've got it behind your back. Start to walk it in as we unthread that right arm. Let's sweep it back up towards the right side for just one more stretch, bringing it back down towards the mat in tabletop. Switching sides, so we'll sweep that left arm up and open. And then again, down and under that right arm, walking those fingertips down. Right hand comes forward, and then possibly if you'd like, you can sweep it up to your lower back, or the hand comes around and grabs a hold of that left hip. Head is resting on the mat. Let's unhook that right hand if you've got it on your back, bringing it down towards the mat. Unthread that left arm, sweeping it back up towards the ceiling. And we'll bring it back down to the mat. Tabletop pose here. Then we'll tuck those toes, pushing back into downward facing dog. From here, we're going to look forward between our hands, step our right foot forward, our left meet our right, forward fold, very slowly rising up. Once we're here, let's give those shoulders a roll back, seeing if we can open that chest just a little bit further. Then we're ready, going to inhale those arms up and overhead again. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. We're going to step back to high lunge again, so that right foot goes back for high lunge. Hands come to the waist if you need, or straight up overhead. Checking those hips are squared to the front of the mat. Shoulders away from the ears. Smiling over here. Let's bring those hands back down to the hip. We're going to shift our weight forward onto that left foot. Seeing if we can push off, the right foot is in the air. Rise to standing and see if you can bring that right leg forward with a bent knee. So we're standing tall, balancing on that left foot, finding a focal point that's not moving. That right leg is up, knee bent. And then see if you can straighten that right leg out in front of you a little bit. Pointing down, kind of a balance. Maybe you'll start to lean back a little bit. Maybe you can take your hands off your hips, out to the sides. Again, balancing pose. If you follow it, come back in, be playful with it. Let's bring those hands back to the hips as we start to rise up. That knee bends again. Right leg comes back down to the mat, giving those legs a bit of a shake. And then again, we'll inhale the arms up and overhead, switching sides. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Shoot that left leg back, high lunge. Sweep those arms Up and overhead. Shoulders are away from the ears. Two more breaths here. And we'll bring those hands back down to the hips. Again, shifting our weight forward. So let's start to shift it forward onto the right foot. Let's see if we can lift the left foot off the mat. Rising up, knees bent. Holding here for a moment. Really gripping the mat with those right toes. Find your focal point of your drishti, something to focus on in front of you. Maybe 3 or 4 feet in front if you've got that much space. Then we'll start to straighten that left leg. Taking the hands off the hips. If you can, maybe leaning back a little. Focusing on our balance. Strong right leg, strong right ankles. One more breath here. Maybe leaning back a little bit further, lifting your leg a little higher. Exhale, let's bring that left leg back down to the mat. Giving them both a shake. Standing nice and tall. Again, we'll lift those. Inhale, lift the arms up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. We're going to take a vinyasa. Inhale, halfway lift, placing the hands on the mat. You can head straight to downward facing dog if you'd like. Otherwise, high plank. We're in downward facing dog. Breathing here. And again, we're gonna lift that right leg up towards the sky. Nice and long and straight first. Stretch out that hip, then let's bend the knee, looking out under the right shoulder. Not rushing these transitions. Exhale, let's bring that right foot forward, place it between our hands. We're coming up to warrior two again, so we'll rotate that left foot 90 degrees. Rising up, windmill those arms open. Reaching equally forwards and backwards. Nice strong legs. We're going to windmill our hands either side of that right leg. Step back into a high plank. Hold here in high plank. And then we're going to come into a side plank. So let's take that right hand, walk it towards the center. And then we'll rotate it onto the blade edge of that right foot. Left leg can stay stacked on top of the right, or you might need to bend your knee, keeping it in front of you, helping with your balance. You've got an imaginary thread pulling on that left hip bone up towards the sky. You've got this. 2 more breaths here. Let's bring that left hand back down to the mat. Great job. Right hand moves out towards the side. Then we'll take a vinyasa or go straight to downward facing dog. Really pushing into those fingertips, the palms of your hands spread flat on the mat, lifting the tailbone up towards the sky here in downward facing dog. And let's lift that left leg up nice and long, keeping the hips square to start. And then we'll bend the left knee, opening up towards the side, looking out under your left arm. Breathing here. Hip openers are great, especially when we spend a lot of time sitting. Let's exhale, bring that left leg forward, place it between our hands, opening into warrior two. So right foot turns 90 degrees. Windmill those arms open. Shoulders are away from your ears. Smile out at those left fingertips as you gaze over them. One more breath here. Now let's windmill those hands either side of the left foot. Step back to high plank. Pausing here, core is engaged. Let's move that left hand towards the center as we rotate to the blade edge of the left foot, coming into a side plank. Again, your feet could be stacked. Right foot could be placed in front of you with a bent knee or behind you. As long as you've got that left hip pulling up as high as you can. 2 more breaths here, you've got this. Embrace the shaking arm if you've got it. Exhale, let's come back down to high plank. From here, taking a vinyasa or straight to downward facing dog. Looking forward between your hands, we'll step that right foot forward, left to meet the right. Forward fold. Inhale, we're gonna rise up slowly. And for a moment, let's stand here with our eyes closed, palms open, receiving positive vibes, good energy, more patience, anything we're in need of. Slowing our breath. We'll gently open those eyes, soft gaze. Heel toe our feet together if they're not. Let's inhale the arms up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. We're coming into a high lunge again, so let's step that right foot back. Rising up. Catch our balance. Hands on the hips if you need to. Sweep those arms overhead. So from here, we're going to shift our weight forward again, coming into the standing pose we did before with the bent knee. So bring the hands to the hips if you need to as we shift that weight forward. Let's bring that right leg up. Knee is bent. From here, we're going to come into a tree pose. So you can grab a hold of your leg with the right hand if you need to, placing it either on the inside of your right calf or your right inner thigh. Wherever you are, seeing if you can find your balance. Again, that focal point somewhere in front of you. Just make sure that your foot isn't over your knee wherever you are. Shoulders are back. And if you'd like, you can release those arms out to the side. Maybe bring them up and overhead, like some big old tree branches. Maybe you'd like to let it move a little bit, testing your balance, being a bit playful. Whatever your body needs today, stillness or movement. One more breath. Always, if you're coming out of it or you're falling out, just take your time and come back in. Let's bring those hands down to the hips. Release that right foot using your hand if you need to. Give those legs a bit of a shake. And we'll switch sides here. So toes are together. Inhale our arms up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Let's step that left leg back for high plank. Rising up. One more breath here. And then hands to the hips if you'd like. Again, we're going to shift that weight forward, pushing off on those left toes. Bring that knee up. And then find your tree pose, inner thigh or inner calf. Find that focal point for yourself. your balance. Standing tall, shoulders are back. And take your arms wherever you'd like, out to the sides, overhead. Maybe still on your waist. Always being patient with yourself in these balancing poses. If you're having trouble finding that sweet spot at any point. Let's bring our hands back to our hips. Release that left leg. Again, giving those hips a shake. Inhaling again, our arms up and overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. We'll take a vinyasa or head straight to downward facing dog. Looking forward between your hands, let's step our left leg forward first this time. Right to meet the left, forward fold, rising up very slowly. Once we're here, we're going to step out the length of our mat, big wide step. So feet are pointing to the side of your mat, probably at about a 45-degree angle, so angle them out just slightly. We're going to lower into Malasana. If you have knees that don't love it as much, maybe just a gentle squat with your hands in prayer. If you are able, see if you can come down, maybe, oops, I've got to walk my feet in just a little bit here, a bit too wide for my, if you're able to come into this full squat, you've got your, the outer side of your upper arms on the inside of your thighs. Maybe they're using them to help push those thighs and your legs out just a little bit further with your hands in prayer pose. If you're up here in the squat, that's okay. Just work on keeping your core engaged and imagine you're on the ledge here. Nice and tall. Your spine is lifting, chest is lifting. And the exhale, we're going to place the hands down on the mat in front of us, pushing our hips up towards the ceiling. Then let's straighten those feet. Heel toe them slightly wider. So you've got a slightly wider stance. And we're going to see if we can sweep these hands behind our back, either grabbing a hold of your wrist or interlacing our fingers, just as we did earlier in today's practice. If you've got a hold of the wrist or those fingers are interlaced, see if you can use that to pull your chest open, lifting your hands up, maybe deepening your forward fold. If reaching those wrists or those fingers isn't possible for you, maybe you just rest your hands on your lower back as we stay in this forward fold. Wherever you are, let's slowly start to rise up. See if you can lead with your chest as you come up, maybe pulling back on those hands, rising up, release them. We're gonna come into Malasana one more time. So heel toe those feet back in if you need to. We'll come into a squat, palms pressed together, lowering all the way down if you'd like. So from here, we are going to try and play with crow pose. And this is really all about what you're comfortable with and really being playful with the pose. So I'm just going to twist myself sideways. So we're in some sort of squat, maybe here, maybe all the way down. The first step is placing our hands on the mat. Fingers are spread wide, just as you would for downward facing dog. The next step is to lift yourself up, knees are bent. This may be your pose. You may just be in sort of a squat today. If you feel like that's where you need to be, just be here. If you'd like to start trying to play with crow pose, if you've got your knees on the outside of the backs of your arms, that's easy to watch first. You can start to, your knees are pushing onto your thighs. You can start to just sort of see if you want to shift your weight forward. See how that feels. Once you've shifted your weight forward, keep your gaze sort of towards the front of your mat, not down. That's going to have you tipping over. And then you might be able to lift one toe, set of toes off, maybe the other toes. Maybe you come right back down. Maybe you've got both toes, both feet off the mat. Really just play with this pose. Or like I said, just stay here in this squat, hands on the mat. If this isn't for you today, maybe you come up into another forward fold. Just trying to come in and out of the pose. And when you're ready, you can come back lower onto your sit bones. Feel free to play around a little bit more as you'd like. These ones are a little bit harder to do without being in the studio together, but it's nice to try and play a little bit, mix things up. So we're going to come into a butterfly pose. Sitting nice and tall, spine is straight, the soles of our feet are pressed together. If you'd like, you can take your hands, wrap them around your feet. See if you can open those feet like a book. This helps to shoot those thighs down further into the mat. Your feet may be out here. Maybe that's not in your practice right now. Wherever you are, we're sitting nice and tall. In the inhale, spine is long, and exhale, we'll see if we can fold forward just a little bit. Leading with the chest, keeping that spine straight. And our inhales, still finding length in that spine. If we can exhale, maybe you can fold just a little bit further. Two more breaths here. Very slowly, maybe using your hands to push away on your feet in the mat. Rising back up, bring those legs together. And then we're going to come into reclined pose. So slowly you can just lower yourself back down onto the mat. If it's hard for you to see where you are, I'll try and walk through everything. We're going to come into a bridge pose to start with. So hands are down by our sides, knees are bent. See if you can walk your heels back to touch your fingertips. This is usually a good spot for most people for bridge pose. If that's not for you, you probably know where your feet need to be, maybe a little further out. And before we rise up into bridge, we're gonna imagine we've got a block between our legs. So our thighs are engaged. We're keeping that block there. We don't want it to drop. And when we're ready, we're gonna slowly start to lift our hips. Very slowly. Those knees are tractioning forward towards your toes as you lift up. Don't forget that imaginary block. Hips are lifting up. You may have them high enough that you can come up onto your shoulders and interlace those fingers behind your back. Otherwise, just keeping your hands at your side. Hips are lifted, core is engaged, glutes are engaged, and thighs. We're holding that block still. Lots of muscles working here. Very slowly, we're going to start to lower back down towards the mat, one vertebrae at a time. Let's windshield wiper those knees side to side. Coming back to center. We're going to come up into bridge one more time, or if shoulder stands in your practice and that's something that you'd like to go into right now, then please feel free to go ahead into that, but that won't be something I'll demo today. So if we're doing bridge, walking those heels back towards our fingertips, Again, we've got our imaginary block, and very slowly lifting those hips, tractioning the knees towards our toes, rising up, maybe coming onto our shoulders. Hips are lifting and pulling forward towards the knees, all at the same time. Chin is slightly tucked. 2 more breaths here. Very slowly coming off those shoulders if you're there. And then 1 vertebrae at a time, we'll lower back down towards the mat. This time, let's bring those knees in for a hug. And we're going to come into happy baby. So we'll bend the knees, then soles of the feet are pointing towards the ceiling. Bring those arms in between your legs. Reach them around towards the soles of your feet. Using your hands to pull your knees a little bit closer towards the floor if possible. And then let's start pushing into the soles of the feet one at a time, rocking ourselves back and forth like a happy baby. Coming into a neutral position, let's give those legs one more big hug. And then we're going to shoot those legs out nice and long, getting ready for Shavasana. Let's let our heels come as wide as the mat. Hips are comfortable. Hands are out to the sides, palms facing up. Start to feel your feet relaxing. Your calves are relaxing. Your thighs, your hips are melting into the mat. Your spine, your shoulders. Check that you aren't holding any tension in your jaw. Maybe give it a jiggle if you need to. Relaxing your forehead. Just being here. I'm just going to play some music for you while you take a few moments of stillness. We'll slowly start to deepen our breath. Maybe giving your fingers and toes a wiggle. Bringing awareness back to your body. And when you're ready, you can roll onto your right side. There's no rush. If you'd like, we'll come to a seated cross-legged position, maybe keeping your eyes closed or a soft gaze. And as we move about our day, there's something from Young Pueblo that I wanted to read, which says, "Make your growth sustainable by moving at a pace that is challenging but not overwhelming." And I think that's a nice thing to keep in mind as we try and have more patience with ourselves and more patience with the process of life and people around us. Thank you so much for practicing with me today. Namaste.